Let's talk about your podcast, ladies, because Mandy, I know you started the Murdaugh Murders podcast in 2021. It's taken off like wildfire. Why do you think it's been so successful? And why, in general, do you think people are so fascinated by this case?
I love the progression that you can hear in the podcast that we have. It did not start out as perfect by any means. I mean, the beginning was rough, but
it was a just do it situation, because before the murders, Mandy wanted to have a podcast about the Murdaughs. So that's what's kind of interesting about how it transpired. So when the murders happened, it was sort of you got to get it out there.
Got to do it.
Yeah.
And he gave you a lot more material, clearly.
Yeah. And then it just kept going. And I remember being like, just get through 10 episodes. You can do 10 episodes. Because I was doing them at night. Like I was working as a reporter during the day, and nights and weekends, my now husband, he was my fiance, would just be like, you got to come to the kitchen table and we got to do this podcast episode. And I'm like, I don't want to. But I love that it sounded rough at the beginning, and you can also hear how exhausted I am. And I was pretty honest about that. And what's weird is that like a lot of people gravitated to that, like honesty and vulnerability. They could relate to it. And it's something that all these fans always say, I've been on this journey with you for this long, because I feel like they have felt like they've been a part of something, because so much has happened since that first podcast was released in 2021. And we've broken a lot of different stories on the podcast. And I mean, we've both grown as people and really gotten more comfortable in front of the mic and things. And I think that that's, it's like a community growing together.
Yeah, for sure.
And Liz, the story itself has such a sort of Southern Gothic quality, in South Carolina's Low Country, this almost evil family that has such a hold and, stokes so much fear among people. There is a richness and to the story, and a drama to the story that I think really attracted listeners, don't you?
Oh gosh, I do think that. It's funny because like she wanted to do a podcast and I wanted to do the book. And so before the murders, I was working on a book that was fiction based on a family of prosecutors in the South. And so the murders sort of ruined that because, obviously the world descended upon us, but it's for all those reasons you just said, that there's just every corner of every theme in life was present here. So it's power, it's money, it's poverty, it's love, it's murder now, it's
connections.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Politics.
Yeah.
All of those things.
It has it all.
Yes, it does. And it's in an area where Hampton County is rural, and a lot is the same, and it's multi-generational, where like she was saying, there's sources whose grandparents are mad that they're talking because their grandparents were around when Buster Murdaugh, the first Buster, was there. So it's almost like the same families are just throughout history, or they're still present. So they carry that history with them and they understand it. It's almost like they're from birth, they understand their position in connection, like in comparison with the Murdaughs. So it's exactly what you said, Southern Gothic. And those are the qualities there that you need to have a really good book of fiction
and stranger than fiction. I think at this point, there were so many times in the trial where everyone would look at each other and it's like, we couldn't have made this up. If you made it up in a book, it would be stupid. Like
I love that aspect because it was fun to watch people from all over the world starting to be like, is this for real? A bomb threat, a juror getting taken off right before the closing arguments, the judge's sentencing today, which was it 15 minutes long that he spoke with them. So yeah, it all of it seems stranger than fiction. The family getting kicked back in the courtroom because they were trying to pass contraband.
Alex Murdaugh staging his own suicide. And I mean, it was so crazy.
Yeah, there were so many moments in the trial when I was like, I can't imagine being a juror that's never heard of any of this. And they're like, wait, he did what?
Yeah.
And I mean, I go, that's when everything went crazy. Like I started the podcast a few months before the suicide. I call it a suicide for hire in quotes, because I think he was just, I think he hired somebody to shoot at him, so it looked like murders were after him.
Yeah.
I don't think he intended on dying. I think he wanted more sympathy.
Absolutely.
But that is when things just went insane with this story, and just no one could have ever imagined it. And I could not imagine sitting there as a juror being like, wife and son murdered, and then what happened? It's just crazy.
Right.
It's crazy.
The two of you have another podcast, Cup of Justice, that you co-host with attorney Eric Bland. Tell us about that.
So one thing we noticed through all this, especially when it came to the financial crimes, was that a lot of people just they simply don't have legal literacy. So people were getting these large settlements and they didn't know they were being stolen from, because they don't know that they're supposed to have a disbursement sheet, or they don't know how it's supposed to work, or that they don't know to look through and see that these expenses, like, why were you going to Hooters? Like, so there's just these conversations that the three of us would have about just how we wanted to help people. But right now, it's a companion to the trial. It's a companion to the breaking news that just keeps on happening. But we just see it as a place where we're going to be teaching people more about, we'll talk about major cases and things like that, but it's always going to be about how people can help themselves and protect themselves from predatory attorneys. Yeah.
And citizen journalism too. I think teaching people how to FOIA and teaching people how to get information from their government. I mean, that's something that we have seen in this case over and over. It's like, if victims were able to get the stuff that we were able to get, a lot of the stuff would have been exposed before. So it's a really kind of a passion project and we have fun with it, because it's just us, it's more of us talking instead of a scripted. Yes.
Right. Mandy, I noticed that your reporting, and both of your reporting, is uniquely focused on the victims. And you both said that you feel exposing truth is a calling. Your career, Mandy, is partially inspired by the death of your brother, Michael, who died when you were just 7 and he was 9. How did that influence you to pursue journalism?
I think it just made me, from a very young age, it changed my life, and it made me realize just how precious and important life is. It was very young at the time. Like, I look at 7-year-olds now and I can't even, I'm just shocked that, but I remember all of my memories and finding out my brother died and realizing what happened and everything. And I still can't believe that all happened to me as a child, and I'm still processing all those things. But that all said, I feel like it just made me very purpose-driven to live a life that matters and to live a life that counts. And the other part of it is just, I know what it's like to be in a family that loses a child, and I know what that suffering is like. And as a reporter, I think that has helped me in a lot of ways to connect, especially with mothers who've lost kids.
Like Mallory Beach's mother.
And Stephen Smith's mother. And just I approach those situations a lot different than a lot of reporters do. I've never been asked to knock on a door of a grieving family, and I never would do that if I was a reporter. I know what it's like, and I know that you just have to let those people come to you, and they usually do within time, and just kind of take a different, like, less aggressive approach to situations like that, and just have a lot more compassion and understanding
and empathy
in your reporting.
Liz, I know that Mandy has said that you taught her everything she knows about investigative reporting. So where does your desire to keep digging and expose the truth come from? And what do you think is the most important lesson you've taught, Mandy, and that other journalists can take to heart?
Well, it's a specific memory, I think, because you mentioned it when it happened. There was a plane crash in Savannah. It was outside of Savannah. And obviously we didn't know a whole lot about it, but it was a military plane crash. And so what we did is we found, or I guess what I did is I looked on the map and saw what stores were around there, like gas stations and convenience stores. And I just started calling them to find out, because I figured these people all know, I mean, they're going to be talking about it. And so that's how we got information. And afterward, Mandy's like, I never would have thought to do that. And that just was always like a different way. I just like, if the road is blocked, what's the other way to get around that roadblock? And, just, I guess the thing that makes me want to do that and like get to the truth is I don't like being lied to. And I don't like other people being lied to specifically. So I think just people who try to get away with something, it bothers me. It's just like something in my soul that's like, you're not better than other people. And we're all the same. We should all have the same system of justice. And we simply don't. And that's a fact. And I think that's why this case was so important, because I can't tell you the feeling of watching Alex Murdaugh stand up in front of an African-American judge in an old Southern courthouse and have this history come upon him and the power dynamic switching. That just made me realize just like how important what we're doing is. And imagine that. I mean, that's a system of justice that did not exist before and it exists now. It's there.
And when it works, it's incredibly gratifying.
So gratifying, yeah.
And when it doesn't, it's infuriating.
That just makes us go out for more sushi to talk about. To get
more stories
Yeah.
that you need to cover. Well, thank you both so much for spending some time talking to me. I really, really appreciate it. I'm so proud of both of you all for your extraordinary work. And I'm sure you're inspiring a lot of young journalists, but what can I say? You did an amazing job and you deserve all the kudos that you're getting.